Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is going to be an interesting episode because I've known this gentleman since 2016. I met him at a Better Business Bureau meeting in Baltimore, Maryland, and he's one hilarious guy, great guy to work with, and his name is Chris Barber. And Chris, or do you want to be referred to as Christopher in this episode?
Oh, I'm a Chris all the way. Are you a Pete or a Peter?
I'm both. Just don't call me Petey. I'm not the dog from Little Rascals.
Little Rascals.
So you can tell that we have a good time. And Chris, first and foremost, thank you for taking time out of. I know you're a busy man. You're like a Super Bowl in a very small room. You're bouncing all the time, but taking time out of your business to spend a little time with me on this podcast.
Oh, absolutely, happy to do it, man.
I've been looking forward to this when I found out you were doing these interviews. And being my IT guy, thinking about the pandemic, what was the number one thing that you saw pop up that was a big challenge that maybe you were a little bit unexpected about when we had to hunker all down and home?
There was actually, Pete, there were two things that really threw me off. So We're in Maryland, and I'm not going to get political here, but our governor did a pretty good job with the coronavirus response. Mm-hmm. But what that looked like was he shut us down rather quickly. So we had, I don't know what it's like out there, but here we had 1 day's notice. So we were all told, tomorrow everybody works from home. No, yeah. Oh, wow. So, a lot of people ask like, wow, did you guys make a killing with the big work from home push? And the answer is no, because everybody had to scramble so fast. Most of our clients didn't even call us. They just told their employees, pick up your laptops, go home. We'll figure it out later. And, I was joking, if Governor Hogan had given everybody 2 weeks notice, which he couldn't have done, but had he done that, we would have cleaned up. But he didn't do that. Everybody scattered, and we unfortunately missed the boat on that revenue opportunity. So a few folks later on hit us up and said, hey, we scrambled to work from home, and would you believe that it's just not working out very well? Could you, clean this up for us? And of course we did. But yeah, it was weird. I never anticipated a phenomenon like that. So that was one thing. And then the other thing was cybersecurity attacks went through the roof. It was crazy. We handle security for quite a few operations, and the targeted phishing attacks and the firewall attacks and just the malware in general skyrocketed. It was clear that the bad guys were convinced this COVID-19 thing was a revenue opportunity for them. And it made our job harder, but I suppose you could also say it made us a little more relevant too. So I guess that was a good thing, but it was very surprising, the uptick. I mean, there's always been an upward trend of that, but depending on how you define the metrics, it was like a 2 or 3 fold increase, just like that, March of 2020. It was really crazy.
So I would assume a lot of these attacks were going on larger organizations. But would they also happen on smaller ones as well? I mean, were they just?
Oh yeah. So depending on what you're talking about, the effort level on the part of the bad guy is really not any different. Large entity, small entity. It's pretty low barrier to entry, if you will, to launch a lot of these attacks. So there is a presumption among a lot of these bad guys where they're the smaller entities are less fortified, the security's lower, maybe perhaps more gullible. They might not have formal training on what to look out for as far as like your email goes, stuff like that. So small businesses are constantly under attack, and that's kind of the space that we play in. We specialize in the small businesses. So they need IT security just as good and just as badly as, say, a 5,000 seat entity, but they don't have the budget for that. And that's kind of what we've always hung our hat on, is that we cater to that aspect of the community.
Being a client of yours and I've not been attacked, so I guess your security is keeping the bad guys away from me, and I greatly appreciate that.
Heck yeah.
And I'm suspicious of all emails and texts and stuff anymore that just don't look right or feel right. But I imagine that that part of the business is that the attacks slowed down as we've gotten deeper and deeper into the pandemic.
Not really. Not really. There wasn't any additional crazy upticks, but they kind of went up and stayed up. So not sure what that's all about, but it was important to have a good security posture pre-pandemic, but it's even more important to have one now.
Yeah, I remember prior to the pandemic, I got a call from the guy who developed my website there for years, and he goes, "Did you make a nasty joke about Putin and the Russians?" No, why? Well, apparently they're attacking your website. We've been able to keep them away. I went, what? I don't mess with Putin. Not one bit. I don't mess with Putin.
I wouldn't recommend it.
I wouldn't. No, not one bit. Yeah, we walking down the streets of Worthington, Ohio, and somebody will put a napkin up against my neck, and next thing you know, boom, there we go.
No more margaritas.
No more margaritas. Yeah, we've killed that inflammation, the margaritas. So now that, I mean, eventually this will all come to an end. Eventually we will be past this pandemic and vaccines will be out there. There might still be a few, some people wear masks. But what do you see as that next big challenge as we begin to navigate a way out of this pandemic and getting back to, I've read a few places that people want to kind of restore where we've been. I don't think we could do that. But what does that future look like?
It's hard to say. And being a business owner is like a pretty difficult proposition in normal times. And now you've got this thing. And, the short answer is nobody knows because we've never really gone through this before. But, it's funny. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's really polarizing. It seems like everybody is all for going back to the office or all for staying at home. I have not met anybody that's like, well, could go either way. I don't really care. Like everybody's got an opinion. So I'd been advocating for well over a decade before the pandemic that we should be seeing more work from home behavior. The technology's certainly there, but also if you have a job where your output is measurable, which is a lot of jobs, there's not a whole lot to talk about. It's really at that point kind of an old school proposition to say, well, I need to see the person and I need to make sure they're sitting at their desk. If you're a salesperson with a sales quota and you're hitting it, does anybody really care if you're in your pajamas or if you only clocked in for 4 hours that day? I mean, if you're getting your job done, you're getting your job done. So I think some of this work from home shift is going to be permanent and probably for the betterment of everybody. But, and then of course you get the whole commercial real estate. Like what's that going to do? We were in the process of, we run a commercial suite right now, but we were in the process of looking to buy something. And, now you're like, do we wait, see what happens, because it's just such a state of flux right now. But the security attacks, they're real, so we're throwing most of our R&D behind staying ahead of these bad guys and keeping everybody safe.
So where you're at right now, is that your corporate office or is that your home office?
This is the home one. So
I was going to say, if it has that feel more of a home office, you've got your putting green behind you with a handful of golf balls and your lightsabers. And the lightsabers, and all your conference, badges and stuff. And that's funny you should mention that because that was one of my questions when the pandemic hit. A lot of people going to find out we're more productive at home than we were at the office and reduce that footprint, that commercial real estate footprint. And some organizations, well, let me ask you this question. One of the things that I thought about when the pandemic hits and we all had to go home and work, how secure, and you're talking about how secure is someone's network, and they're picking up that cost. So were you able to, your clients say they have 10 employees, were you able to go in and help them get set up, or when you had to go clean some stuff up, were you working with them directly one-on-one? Or did the owner say, we need to pick up the cost and make sure that we've got this more of a permanent type of nature?
Yeah, but for the most part, it was on the employer. What was interesting was, so many things in IT, and probably every business, but certainly IT, if you say you want to make a secure environment, there's like 1,000 ways you get there, and a lot of it comes down to, the IT provider's philosophy. We've always subscribed to the school of thought that you should take security down to the endpoint level. So basically the computer level. So, you could do network level, you can go beyond the network level, but you could also just focus on the computer itself. And that's always been the primary way that we deliver security. And I was at a luncheon a few years ago where they had the cybersecurity director of the FBI for, it's kind of weird how they loop them together, Maryland and Delaware. I don't know why they put those two together, but he was giving a talk to a whole bunch of IT providers, and he asked the room, he's like, how many of you folks are focusing strictly on the endpoint level? And I was the only person to raise my hand, and he pointed me out. He said, that guy right there, he's doing it right. We're the FBI, so here's why. So it's always been a good strategy. So what ended up happening, Pete, is when everybody started working from home, for the most part, the security they had in place, that's all they needed, which I couldn't tell you that we had that kind of a crystal ball and we knew that everybody's going to work from home, but it scaled well, you know what I mean? So in certain circumstances, we had to ramp up the security a little bit, but for the most part, I mean, it just worked. And it's funny what you were saying about the commercial real estate. I'm broadcasting you live from my own house. Before the pandemic, I took a business development class at Johns Hopkins that was, I guess it was about 3 months, and it involved being out of the office sometimes 2 full days a week, which is a big ask for a business owner.
Yeah.
And I was talking with somebody who graduated from the program, and she said because she was missing in action every Thursday, that when she graduated from the program, she owns a restaurant in Fells Point in Baltimore. She said, I just started working from home on Thursdays. The staff was used to me not being there, and I got so much work done. And I'm like, oh man, that's brilliant. I'm going to do that. So pre-pandemic, right before the pandemic, I started working from home on Thursdays, and I only could pull it off about every other week. Things kept getting in the way. I kept getting dragged into meetings where there were just so many people, I couldn't ask them to reschedule it. And then the pandemic hit, and I was like, all right, well, like a lot of businesses, we were considered essential. So we were open. The office was open, but we weren't having folks, other folks come in.
Yeah.
And I wanted to keep every staff member in their own room. I felt like that was a kind of a safer way to spread it out a little bit. But that involved, we have some folks that are already working from home, but that involved me working from home all the time. And, suddenly I went from maybe 1 day every other week to 5-6 days a week without fail. And it's weird, man. The first thing that hit me, I don't know if this happened to you, but I didn't realize how much time I spent in the car. So when we got locked down, I'm like, dude, I just got 2 to 3 hours a day back by not driving. I'm like, wow, I was driving all the time. That's crazy. That's crazy. All these hours just suddenly fell into my lap. It was great.
Yeah, I've been working at that time. I was working from home for a number of years. So when it hit, I didn't even flinch. Except on my side of it was I had 2 new full-time FTEs in my house, my wife and son, and they really weren't worth a damn. I tried to put them on warning, tried to fire them, tried to do everything. It's like, nope, couldn't do it. They wouldn't listen to me. The only 2 that would listen to me were the 2 dogs. They were part-time. So that was but I'm during the pandemic and everything, I got real claustrophobic. And I got a buddy who had some space. He said, look, I've been talking about, subletting the space. You want to give it a try? And I said, yeah. And they're at first going, I'm driving to work. This is so cool. Woo! I'm in traffic again. I forgot what this was like. It was short-lived. But it's like, it was just like the opposite effect. But then as I started coming down here more and more, I went, okay, the human interaction still is critical to some degree. Just that, this is interaction, but that face-to-face, no screen behind a computer or anything like that. It was fun again. It was absolutely fun again, because I remember when I moved into the office at home, I was done with this day in, day out grind. So there's always some type of balance that's out there. As we begin to wrap up, I do have an interesting question that just popped into my head, because I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and you've been in business for 22 years. So you must have started when you were 10.
Oh man, you're awesome, Pete. I was 12.
and did you just start on your own, or did you have a couple of people at the time?
Started off on my own. Did I ever tell you the origin story?
No.
I'll give you the fast version. So I used to be an auto theft investigator, and that was
used to do auto thefts.
Yeah, that was way more fun. So, long story short, I felt like the technology was going to evolve in a way where that industry was going to kind of sort of disappear, which is largely what's happened. Mm-hmm. So I was plotting a new career change, and decided to build a computer and see if IT was the answer for me, and ended up having to engage with a computer repair place, and discovered that this industry is just chock full of terrible, god awful customer service. So I was like, wow, if I start an IT company with good customer service that focuses on the client, wow, that would be like a key differentiator. So that's how it all got started, at my girlfriend at the time's dining room. And, the rest is history. So 22 years in business as of a few weeks ago. And we've won more awards for our customer service in all the IT companies in the area. There's 1,637 of them. So that's what we get excited about.
So you start off by yourself. How many employees do you have now?
I like to say we're a huge organization. There's 7 of us.
7 of us,
including me.
That's still seven mouths and 7 families. So thinking, what would you do different back then than if you knew what you knew now?
Oh gosh, that's always such a good question. Owning a business is not for the faint of heart. It's like doing a high wire act with no net, and it's scary. And if you make the wrong mistake, sign the wrong contract, you might not have a house anymore. It's crazy, the risk. So I've always been very, very cautious and very conservative, because I don't want to lose my house, or, I don't want to be in a situation where I can't feed the kids. But looking back, I think it was a little too cautious, because that could stifle your growth as well. So it's a balancing act. I think if I could find a younger Chris, I'd be like, take chances, man. You're on to something.
Yeah, take some risks. But like you said, you're cheaper than a geek, and you're the chief geek. And those professions that are typically more technical in nature tend to be more risk adverse.
That's a good point. Yeah,
accountants.
Yeah, that's legit.
Even in their own businesses, and I think I kind of fall in that same thing. I love taking risks, but I think when I first started this business, I didn't take enough risks.
Yeah.
And now I'm trying to take more, and I'm going, okay, well, it's I fail a lot, but it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And that was the key.
That's the lesson I keep learning.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as I thought it would be. And geez, I probably should have done that years ago. Every time I make a big decision, I'm like, well, that worked out, and I should have done that years ago.
Yes, absolutely. The gift that keeps on giving. Well, buddy, I appreciate your time. I know you're busy, and I will be getting back into the Baltimore area hopefully soon. Actually, maybe even next week. And if I do get up that way, let's go meet at a restaurant and have a adult beverage, or 30 or 7. Or just a couple.
That's what Uber's for.
All right, man. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you for having me, man.